Once upon a midnight dreary, while I pondered, weak and weary, over many a quaint and curious volume of forgotten lore, while I nodded, nearly napping, suddenly there came a tapping, as of someone gently rapping at my chamber door.
You sure? 4, 3, 2. So, welcome back to another episode of the Unsettled. And judging by the intro, you probably know what this one now is. But we're going to be going over the life of Edgar Allan Poe and his death. And then coming up yet again with our own theory on possibly how he died, as it's still inconclusive.
And just having a discussion.
Yeah, a lovely discussion at the end where you're either left
sum up everything that we've discussed.
Where you're either left feeling, I've learned something.
It was last time.
Or you're going to be there like, huh? So, a quick rundown of his little life. Then we move straight into it.
Yeah.
Okay? So, he was born January 19th, 1809 in Boston. Okay? He died October the 7th in 1849. So, he didn't actually live that long.
No.
So, that's a bit sad, really.
40 years.
Yeah. And he did quite a fair bit.
He did do quite a fair bit.
He did quite a fair bit, but his life always seemed to revolve around tragedy. Which I'm pretty sure, as I said, do a bit of research, try and figure something out, and you're like, oh wow, okay. So I'm sure many people will know what he's famous for, but he's famous for his short stories, which often involve mystery, macabre, and horror. But he also dabbled in very dark, meaningful poetry. And I think like his most famous one is The Raven, which a lot of people seem to know, and that is the only one that I feel, is really...
Sums him up kind of thing.
Yeah. I mean, it sums up his... I guess, going through an author's work, in terms of books, poetry, you kind of get a little inkling of what he was either going through, or his emotional state.
Yeah.
Which is often very intriguing. I mean, I kind of use my writing as an outlet.
Yeah.
So I can kind of relate to why he would write certain things. But he did do a detective story called Murders in the Rue Morgue, which is quite a well-known one.
Yeah.
Created a lot of atmosphere in all his horror stories. So there was a lot of build-up.
Yeah.
Which often reminded me a bit of H.P. Lovecraft, but you probably don't know much of that one. Which is perfectly fine. But I feel that all of his stories and poetry is kind of unrivaled. Like, there is no one who can beat that element.
No, and he was also, like, as you say, he was considered, obviously back then he was considered pretty much the father of science fiction.
Yeah, he's the GOAT.
He's
the GOAT.
I swear we find a goat every time.
Mate, we pick the goats.
We pick the goats
because we want to be a part of the goats. That's what it is. He excelled in academics, despite him hardly turning up.
Yeah.
He also suffered...
He was a very bright mind.
Yeah, he also suffered a lot of gambling addictions, which could often maybe progress or foresight into his later elements. Many have actually called him the architect of short stories. Now that is a name that you would love to have.
It is.
The architect of short stories. Like, if you...
It's like the father of science fiction.
That's literally
the
like...
architect
of short stories. That is literally like the pinnacle of any person's career. I was going to say any man then, but no, we're throwing women in there too.
Any person's career.
If you can create the perfect blueprint, that's the architect. That is the person that you would be like, okay, this guy's got something.
Oh yes. He was also regarded as a central figure of romanticism in the USA.
He would dabble in romance.
Romance, poetry, along that kind of...
It kind of reminds me of H.P. Lovecraft. I know this is on Edgar Allan Poe, but H.P. Lovecraft created a lot of weird stories. A lot of science fiction, a lot of monsters, right? But because he was such a recluse, like H.P. Lovecraft was, he had to read books on how to make love to a woman because he'd never done it before. It's like you couldn't go out there and get experience.
Like
you have to read a book. Yeah,
the actual 40-year-old virgin.
yeah. He literally had to read a book and learn how to do this. So Edgar Allan Poe is the son of an English-born actress and actor. So both his parents were actors. I think his father did.
They were both the Poes, wasn't they?
Yes.
They were the.
His father left
when he was quite young.
I think it was like 2.
Yeah.
About 2. And then his mother died in 1811. And he was taken in by allegedly his godfather soon after. So by now it kind of seems like he's got no family left.
No, he's kind of that innocent, really. That
But
child.
he had 2 traumatic events already. So his father left him, which is meant to be a symbol, usually for a guy, to be like, okay, well, here's my role model.
I'm now, yeah.
Yeah, and then he loses his mother. So now he's gone to his godfather. It's kind of like, oh, okay, he's now got taken in by his godfather. He was taken to Scotland in 1850 to 1820, given classical education for 11 months. He sounds like a right boffin.
It was a boarding school, if I remember correctly.
Yes. But gambling issues, yet again, he actually lost his education due to gambling issues. And I think his godfather would only give him so much money. So he would try and multiply his money by gambling. It makes you wonder, if he was that good, why did he keep having problems with gambling? if he was good at gambling.
It's too much of a good thing as a bad thing. Maybe it's that. Well, no, but maybe it was that kind of thing.
Maybe.
He just pushed it too far every time.
Yeah, maybe. But he did lose his education in Scotland. But he did have some English background in his writing, which then would excel in any other country, I can imagine.
Yeah.
So, he returned home to Richmond, where he met Sarah, his first partner. This ain't the younger thing. This is his first partner.
Just before, obviously, you go into once he's a bit older. His godfather actually, it was never. How do I put this? It was never legally put through.
Right. So it's just like not even a legal guardian.
No. He was a guardian, legal guardian, but his godfather never fully adopted him.
Right. So it was only part-time type of thing.
He was a legal guardian.
Yeah.
But he wasn't adoptee.
Right. Okay.
Adopted thing.
So
But
he still kind of had.
he still took his godfather's last name, which was Allan. Him and his wife. But he lost.
Look at you fucking sense. Here I am trying to give the viewers my intake of dark and horrible and macabre.
No,
and there's you go, oh, well, I heard.
No, it's just building up the...
Do you want to take the lead?
It's just building up the ground rules.
I suppose it is. Right, so he later got engaged to Sarah. Poverty forced him to join the army. Don't know if you knew that. He joined the army, but on the death of Poe's foster mum, she purchased his release, basically, to get out of the army. Not being funny, you get sent to the army because of poverty, and you're not going to make much money being a writer. You're sent to the army, and then you've got to come back out because of death type of thing.
Yeah, he actually, while he was in the army, he released a short story.
Yeah.
Which he basically didn't give a name to who'd done it.
Yeah.
But
all the
pros, like he'd use a ghostwriter.
Yeah.
That kind of background. But all the proceeds of that went straight back into gambling.
Obviously. So during this time, like you said, when he was in the army, he did release a few books, short stories. During his time frame, soon after, still struggling to make money, he actually ended up losing his first soon-to-be wife, Sarah. While he was in the army, I actually think she might have found someone else while he was there, so he came back and had nothing. And yet he's still struggling to be a writer. Like, tragedy follows this man, I swear.
He's the most unluckiest guy I've heard.
Yeah. Fast forward a little bit more in the time frame, I think like a couple months. He then married his cousin, Virginia, and she was 13. Back then, it was allowed.
It wasn't even frowned upon. It was. The thing is, it was common.
Yeah.
It was.
If you're not blood relative, it's fine. Just try and keep it in the family.
No, it was more of it was his 13-year-old adopted cousin.
Yeah.
So
See,
technically,
when people say he married his 13-year-old cousin,
yeah,
it's like
it wasn't his
it wasn't
blood
actually,
relative.
It's just
it was just it was legal stuff.
It's just the fact he married a 13-year-old.
Yeah.
That's the big naughty boy. Very naughty. Very, very naughty. So he was at the time a critical reviewer for publications and newspapers. So he tried getting his foot somewhere in the door.
Yeah, he
Really.
like all writers do. They start off from the bottom rung kind of thing.
Yeah. This is where his life takes a little bit more of a tragic turn. So he was dismissed from his job for drinking, which he soon had developed an addiction to.
Yeah.
Not necessarily a heavy drinker, because he would drink a few, then get incredibly tipsy.
Yeah, because he wasn't a heavy drinker.
Yeah,
Just
but he would have a few, bourbons,
Yeah.
Sipping them. That's fine. I guess, you can weigh up the pros and cons of this. He loses his job, being a critical, reviewer.
Yeah.
And then has a minor drinking problem because he gambles and it doesn't really help.
Working out so well for him.
But he would also, if he was doing public speaking, he would have a few drinks before he went out, and many people used to
Dutch courage.
Yeah, many people would see him as possibly the person that would be like, oh, he's really quiet until he has a drink and then he comes out of his shell. I mean, there was some talk that he did deal with narcotics. He did give a bit of a sniff on things, opium being the main one, I think, that he would dabble in. I mean, that was just giving him some confidence to go out and speak about his work, or even read his books to people, read his short stories and so on. But to me, it's kind of like gambling, drinking,
bit of drugs.
Bit of drug, not good.
No.
But it would help with him build up his confidence.
Yeah.
So many believed he was a drug addict. I mean, his writing was obscene, in terms of whoa, okay, we've never experienced a writer like this. Where the fuck do you get this from? Where do you get this information from to be this type of writer? I mean, he had pretty much everything on par. And obviously the way he come across, many thought he used to be a drug addict. There was no way someone who was very quiet all of a sudden turns into someone with Dutch courage.
No.
So his cousin/wife died in January 1847. She did die at a young age, and I guess Poe succumbed to more hard drinking and more possible drugs at this point. So he became a bit of a recluse. I think around now he started going more into poetry and started developing his, more of his darker side.
Yeah, more of pure emotion.
Yeah,
Right.
I mean, it was more, beforehand he was writing because he enjoyed writing. Now it seemed like he had a lot of tragedy.
As you said, an outlet.
Yeah, and he would use that to fully push himself into writing, which later obviously made him so famous.
Yeah.
So in a way it helped. It just didn't help him while he was alive.
No.
Unfortunately. But he had a brief fling yet again with Sarah, his ex-fiancée, which lasted all of 6 months.
As the rebounds do.
Yeah, he was hoping to rekindle his love and try and gain something back from his losses.
Yeah.
I mean, he probably was like,
fair play to the bloke. You got to give it a go.
She cheated on him. She found another man while he was in the army.
Supposedly.
He came back with nothing.
Exactly.
He lost his foster parents at this point.
The
poor guy ain't got a lot.
Something good in his life.
The drugs. It helped.
Tries to drink and God knows else what.
Gambling.
Well, that didn't help.
To be honest, drugs, drink and gambling, that's your night fixed. That's your night set up.
Yeah, but long term, mate.
Mate, they're always going to be there. She's going to die soon. But she did help him financially, and helped him begin writing a bit more. But still, yet his writing, in my opinion, could not be topped. No one in this era could top his style of writing, which to me really does show he was physically a mastermind at producing short stories, like you said, crime ones, horror. He had
science fiction.
Yeah, he had the atmosphere, he had everything, but he just weren't given that good break. And I think that was just like, just that close.
So close.
That close. So as I wrote down, it seemed death and tragedy was literally around him all the time. He was literally succumbing to a lot of darkness.
Yeah.
And it was, you know, a lot of what he wrote about seemed to haunt him as well, I think.
Yeah, as if you believe something long enough, then it's gonna take up most of your life.
Like I said, that famous poem, The Raven, as we can see, The Raven. But the famous poem, The Raven, was him possibly dealing with madness. Because he would hear a tapping and he'd think the bird is there to talk to him, and it shows you how he got lost.
Yeah.
Mentally and physically.
He just withdrew so much into himself.
Yeah.
After all of whatever's happened
I
his
mean,
life.
like, a lot of people, like, you know, like, even yourself, you can get lost in something.
Oh, yeah.
And then once you're lost in it,
it's hard.
It starts to take...
It is hard to bounce yourself
back
out.
to reality.
Yeah.
You can live in that time frame.
Oh, yes.
And I feel that this is where he obviously started living in that time frame. Because most of what he wrote was traumatic events. But despite his struggles, his writing and his life seemed to be on the up. But little did he know, the foresight and poems aligned with death was actually coming for him. It was on the cusp, it was almost there. So he left for a business trip, smartly dressed. Wasn't seen for a few days. They were unsure of his whereabouts. He was found a few days later in the gutter in rags, not the clothes he wore. So a gentleman, charismatic if he was on the opium and drugs and everything else, always dressed smart, he had to.
Yeah.
And now they found him in a gutter, not dead, but they found him in the gutter in rags. What's your thought on this? What the fuck do you think at this precise moment?
He went on one hell of a fucking bender.
You reckon? I mean, he's trying to rekindle his love. I mean, he's on the up. He's on the plus. All things are looking good.
And what do you do with that? You go on a bender because you think I'm untouchable at this point. You're on that mental high as to say everything is going my way.
Yeah, okay. I can see where you're thinking. It's like, I'm invincible. This is me.
And then he gets that. He has a bit too much.
Yep.
And
you reckon it was like a proper bender? Like he was like, whoa, like on a lad's night out, but just him.
Well, you don't know it was just him.
No, but
I can imagine there was a few of them, but
he comes across as a recluse. He doesn't come across like he's got a lot of friends.
True.
He comes across as someone that would rather have a partner rather than close friends.
I've got a few bits down.
Yeah.
So he was found delirious.
Yeah.
On the streets of Baltimore.
Yeah.
In great distress and in need of immediate assistance, according to Joseph W. Walker.
Yeah.
Who found Poe.
Yeah.
He was coherent enough to tell officials how he wasn't.
Yeah.
Coherent enough to tell officials how he got into his predicament. But it is supposed that it was drugs.
Right.
At that point.
Yeah. At that point. At that point of his time.
Yeah. And he kept repeating the word Reynolds over and over again.
Do you have any idea who this Reynolds person is?
Nope.
I have a bit of insight.
Okay.
But we'll continue.
Yeah. No.
From where he is.
Yeah, we'll go.
He's in the gutter.
Yeah.
He's delirious.
Yeah.
He's been found by someone.
Kind of things out, and
he's speaking to the world.
Yeah. He's speaking parcel tongue for a while.
Yeah. So for someone that's always smartly dressed, who was found in rags.
Yeah.
And a lot of people were unsure of what the fuck happened. Quite frankly. I mean,
Oh,
it's like, whoa, okay, you're not
Whoa.
dead, you're not injured,
No.
but you're speaking
How have
in
you fallen?
parcel tongue.
Yeah. How have you fallen?
Yeah.
This far.
So he got admitted into the hospital.
Mm-hmm.
They tried helping him the best they could. I mean, theoretically, health weren't that great. But throughout the time he was in hospital, he was speaking to the walls,
mm-hmm.
speaking to objects,
mm-hmm.
and speaking constantly to anything. But nothing was making sense. It seemed like he was possibly reciting words of poetry or short stories.
Yeah.
So right now you're like, what's wrong with this man? What is wrong with this man? Something seriously wrong. But he did begin to get better. He was getting better, but then all of a sudden just went whoop, and went straight down.
He got so much more coherent.
Yep.
And that's when he started calling Reynolds over and over again.
Yep. See, Reynolds was possibly the person that he kept voting for, or it was possibly someone that he had been with at that time that has left a lasting memory in his mind. So you got anything else to say before we move on to his actual death?
Whether it's true or not, this was from one of the constables that stayed with him up until his death. Like kept on going back to check on him, see how he was. He would, just before he died, he recited, "Lord help my poor soul."
That was pretty much it.
That was pretty much it. And the constable, like the policeman at the time, was just like,
no idea what the fuck is going on right now. Yeah.
But they'd had a look through his poetry, through all of his books, and there was never that quote within them.
Okay. See, that's pretty...
So that was more of a personal him looking up. And just
as if to say, someone fucking help me, basically. Like,
that was his call for help.
Yeah. That, like, at this point, he had passed away. His mind had gone. But then, this is where the speculation comes in. This is how we go, ooh, okay, how did this, or what did this happen? Like, where did it all start? So, like I said, it seemed that Edgar Allan Poe was foreseeing his future through writing. Everything death-related was coming for him. So, like I said, he began to get better, dropped down, died. I think it was died within 4 days of being in hospital. I think it was.
Yeah, it was the 4 days.
Yeah. They then buried him in an unmarked grave. Which to me is a bit... It's not rushed, but it seems like for someone that had developed such a good following of literature and writing...
Why would it be unmarked? Why would it be unmarked?
That was one of the things that I was like, unmarked? Really? Like, you're giving this guy, like, the shittiest send-off. The shittiest send-off.
Yeah.
And he'd already made quite a fair bit of money because everything was on the up. So he had some money for a good grave. But right now, no. So he's buried in an unmarked grave. So, here we go with the theories. So, theory 1.
Right. So, as I said, just before you get onto the theories, it is reported that, he's buried in an unmarked grave. All of his medical records, all of his, even down to his death certificate, was miraculously lost. Whether that being through
people being clumsy.
But then
don't need this anymore.
The thing is, for his medical records to go missing, and even his death certificate to miraculously gone missing, okay.
It's an inside job. It's an inside job.
Like, to be fair, back then, you can easily walk into a hospital, take medical records,
and walk out. I mean, it could have been his
but to get a death certificate,
which his wife probably would have, well, his partner probably would have got sent a copy of
not back then.
No, but she might have been able to get it.
Then. It goes to the it goes to the church where he is buried.
Okay.
Because he was alone when he died.
Obviously.
So it goes to the church where he was buried. But even that's lost.
That's a bit weird, you know. That is a bit weird. So, okay. So they don't know how he ended up there, and when he died, it was just like, oh, he died of. But they did say he, doctors and stuff did say he died of this. He might have died of this.
Yeah,
he might have died of that.
It could have been due to alcoholism.
Yeah.
Alcoholism. Yeah. Drug abuse.
Yeah.
And it could also have been a hit. But obviously at the time, doctors were saying it was mental illness, alcoholism, and disease, basically.
Okay. So you've pretty much got that, but I've got a little bit more. So here we go, theory one. So cooping could have been beaten, robbed, and drunk in the same instance. So did you actually look up what cooping was? It does sound like a sexual act.
It does, yeah.
It does. Did you look it up?
Yeah, I did. I haven't written it down, but I did look it up.
Yep. So basically...
So it's basically, feeding someone information while giving them alcohol to reinforce your story.
Yep.
But then basically the toxins and everything in the alcohol will then twist and warp your mind.
So, okay, you're close enough. Right, so cooping was actually a legal practice where they would, say like a gang member or gangs would pick random people to vote, right? So they would intoxicate them and then give them different disguises and go into like polling stations and vote each turn.
Okay.
Right? So basically they will say to you, we're going to kill you if you don't do it.
Right.
Edgar Allan Poe doesn't seem like the type of guy that's going to defend himself very well. He's probably got to smack him with a book.
Yeah.
Yeah? Yeah. So basically that was one of the theories. He could have been a subject to cooping.
Okay.
Which was very common because that's how people got in power, that's how towns got council people. So they could have, every time he'd gone into the voting station, he'd come back out, but every time you voted you got given a drink. Yeah? But they would get him to go in and out, in and out, in and out. Can you imagine them standing outside with different disguises?
To be fair, he gets tipped off of two.
Yeah. Which we later find out possibly why, but yeah.
He's only going to be really good for about 3 drinks before he's on the floor.
All he's got to do is literally just tick a box and put it in, and then they give you a drink. Can you imagine, like I was saying, this gang's outside.
You walk in normal, you come out, you go back, you change.
Yeah, but can you imagine the fact, they're not even that scary. It's the fact that they will threaten to beat the shit out of you, then they'll say, put on a little pink number, we like that one. And then you're like, okay. You put on a little pink dress and a wig, in you go to vote, come back out. The pink number ain't for you, is it? Right, we'll put this on you.
Choose the red one.
Yeah, exactly. Can you imagine?
You're like,
and you're getting more and more drunk. You're like, I'll put it on. I'll go back in. Literally, it was illegal to do this. But imagine how many votes he may have taken.
Oh yeah.
Or how many drinks he would have taken.
People from the pubs, blah blah blah.
Exactly.
Easy.
Basically, I think it's really good. I think they should bring it back to England. Every time you vote, you get a drink.
It would make the.
It would make them vote.
It would make people vote.
I'm going to run with it. So, like what you said, the theory 2. Well, my theory 2 is, like I said, alcohol poisoning and drug overdose. But for someone to not have their clothes that they left the town in.
Yeah, but you think if you'd gone on that all-night bender, or 2-day bender or whatever, and you're around someone's house, then maybe there's Reynolds guy.
Okay, but they never did find his suitcase of clothes or anything.
No, that's the thing, but...
It could have just been holed up in a flat somewhere.
Exactly,
Yeah, okay.
You do hear about,
I mean, I've gone out on a bender and I've came home with, my shirt open and a shoe missing.
But he just obviously took it to the extreme.
Possibly. So,
and got a whole new change of clothes. But
alcohol poisoning and drug overdose. That's very... But may I add, here's the...
Through the medical thing?
Yeah.
All the medical history that we can gather.
Yeah.
I would say theory 2 was a good base.
Good base. I'm about to destroy theory 2.
Okay.
Going back to theory 1, he was found outside of a polling station. In the gutter, outside of one.
Yeah. Mm.
What are you doing outside one if you haven't voted continuously and you're pissed after 4? Do you see what I mean? They found him outside of a polling station in rags. Okay, so alcohol could have obviously killed him off, but he could have been the target of cooping.
Yeah, it could have been.
I like saying that word,
Cooping.
I'd like to coop. So
This makes it sound like a pigeon.
not now.
No,
I'm doing it. Right, theory 2. Sexually transmitted diseases. Syphilis. It has the same effects of what he was experiencing in the hospital.
Mm.
You know,
Delusions.
it has been a couple of years, depending if Sarah was cheating on him before he went to the army. He popped it in there before he left, was in the army and was like, what is this green, yellow liquid pouring up? I must write about this green liquid monster, you know. He could have had syphilis. It was very popular back then.
Yeah, no.
And they never actually looked down there because they were more concerned with his head than looking at his penis. But a urine infection can kill you off as well.
It can make you go delusional.
Yes, as you are well aware.
As
You
I am.
experienced one,
not
but
I have, but no.
but
I'm
a urine
well aware.
infection affects older men in terms of their mindset.
Yeah.
Right, so theory 4. This comes from one of the autopsy reports of what they managed to find and gather. He allegedly had a tumour on the brain from a young age, hence how drink would get him drunk very quickly after one.
Yeah.
The tumour could have got big enough and killed him off after a few drinks. He'd been drinking from a young age, mate. He was a gambler, he was a drug addict.
But then you would have shown signs of nose bleeding. You would have shown signs as the tumour grew.
And now I'm going to fuck theory 4 up for you. Okay,
No,
so
by all means, I don't believe that one.
okay, well you might believe it now. So he was buried in an unmarked grave, right? They wanted to give him a proper send off eventually. I mean, now his grave is a lot more better than what it was.
Oh yeah.
But it was actually a mausoleum, like a mausoleum, whatever it is, where they build you up and make you. He had some historical merit. Yeah, mausoleum. That's all, right? As they were exhuming his body, the coffin fell apart. His skull fell to the ground. Like, even in death, he can't get a break. He's like, fuck me, my head's falling off. But no, his skull fell to the ground and a lump came out of his skull. Instantly, newspapers ran with this. They were like, oh, it's got to be his brain. Straight away, they were like, his brain. No. They checked the lump. They analysed it, did their research on it. Your brain would harden and disintegrate because it's a muscle, right? The only thing that wouldn't do that, or obviously it went hard, but it didn't, it didn't disintegrate.
Yeah.
The only thing that wouldn't
take longer.
the only thing that wouldn't do that is a tumour. And it weren't just a rock, because they were very specific. Many people thought it was his brain, so they were like, "Oh, hang on, wait."
Oh, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
If you think it's a brain, how would you know from
exactly? Yeah, but yeah, it was a small lump that came out of his skull.
Yeah, I'm not saying that he probably didn't have one. I'm just saying that you would have more.
He would have more effects. Yeah. I mean, I will try and remember, and there is a scientific word for the tumour of what he had. But
is it a benign tumour?
No. It was a certain type of problem, but his whole family suffered from it.
Oh, okay, so it's a...
Yeah?
Yeah.
They all suffered from it.
Inherited one.
Yeah, they all suffered from the same tumour, and basically, like a doctor actually explained, that every time he would have a drink, it would trigger off inside his mind.
It would increase the blood flow,
which
the
is
tumour
why,
would then grow in size,
which
and
is
blood
why,
pressure on his brain.
Which is why his whole family suffered the whole, I have one drink, I'm tipsy.
Yeah.
That is why they all suffered that. So, I'm thinking like, okay, you got your 4 theories, and it's still, like I said, undisclosed to some extent.
Yeah.
There's no positive proof, but a lot of people have said it's either the brain tumour mixed with the drink and the drugs.
Yeah.
And then they've also led the way of cooping because that's where they found his body.
And it would explain why he was...
he was in rags.
Yeah.
So what are you left with? I mean, like I said, all of them can be right.
Cooping sounds more plausible as the more information that we get.
Many people have said it was cooping.
I would say that was more plausible, but then, you know, you've got two medical theories plus.
A
So
tumour.
it's like, yeah. So it. I think it could be just like his life, really. Like,
You think he's just a fucking
whole
unlucky
just-
sod?
like all of these like thousands of little things
Yeah.
are built to this one occasion, and you
Yeah.
know, like life in death, he hasn't caught a fucking break.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, online it does say there is a lot of wild theories about the cause of his death, ranging from mercury poisoning, which could have happened,
Yeah.
to rabies.
Rabies and TB, mate.
No, TB.
Yeah.
TB, you don't need no TLC, but it's TB.
Yeah. Rabies and TB go around everything, and it's always a go-to excuse.
Okay, so here it's got...
Sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't.
It's got here, many historians think Poe was a victim of cooping.
Yeah.
In the 19th century, voting was actually kind of dangerous. Crooks known as coopers would grab people off the streets, beat them up and get them drunk or high on opium. The victims were then forced to vote.
Which could explain the substance abuse.
And they were forced to vote at multiple polling places, but in order to disguise these drugged up people, the coopers would dress their victims up and get them drunk or high. And they were, like I said, they were forced basically to do it.
Spin them around 5 times, shove them back in the door.
They were, yeah.
Like
I mean, a lot of people have said the cooping theory accounts for both Poe's change of clothes and his delirious state. Even more convincing, Poe was discovered on election day in front of a saloon that doubled as a polling place.
But then, going back to my first theory, it could also be a hit. You know, but that's just that, like, oh, no one would, you know, no one would, like, think that this could be a proper thing.
I mean, theoretically, he could have just been a target because he was wearing such clothes.
High fashion clothing.
And they just thought, kick the shit out of him or drug him up while he's on the train.
Yeah.
And literally just rob him of what he's got and dump him somewhere. Yeah. But dumping him outside of a polling station.
Well, I don't know if you've done anything properly after his death.
You go
on. About his literary rival.
Go
on. Rufus Wilmot Griswold.
Sounds like something out of Harry Potter, that does, doesn't it? Griswold tales, go
on. He wrote a massive, basically, he slanted.
Or slandered.
Slandered.
There we go.
That's it.
Probably had slanty writing. Yeah.
No, he slandered basically a high profile obituary.
Yeah.
Under a pseudonym filled with false information.
Okay.
Change page.
Yeah. I read like 3 lines.
Basically, it cast Poe as a lunatic and a madman. He described him as a person who walked the streets in madness.
Like I said, a lot of people thought he was on drugs because of the way he acted after a drink.
With lips mounting indistinguishably, like he was uttering curses under his breath.
To be honest.
But then that could be that you got so blind drunk from this cooping thing that you're just muttering shit because the tumour in your head's about to explode.
I mean, it's a well-known fact his family suffered with this tumour, and it was hereditary. It was in his brother or sister or someone. But the fact that he would simply go through these drink effects, like, in all fairness, his downfall made his upright.
Yeah.
His downfall of the way he lived created, like I said, probably the best literature you're ever going to read.
So,
which is another weird...
There's a theory 5.
Yeah. Go on,
so
theory 5.
This Griswold bloke was his rival. In writing, basically.
I can outdo you, no you can't, I'm not a shit because I'm off my tits.
Exactly.
Yep.
Like, you know, he's had all of this great fame, great stuff, and, you know, he hasn't really been able to produce anything.
Yeah.
So what's the best way
Kill off your rival.
What's the best way of promoting yourself?
Okay, yeah.
Do you get me?
Yeah, I get it.
So, the obituary that Grimwald, let's just say, took account for was at the bottom of the page, signed Ludwig, which is a very, it's a grey area.
Right, okay.
So, Gridwald used ghostwriters.
Of course. Many writers would. Cool.
Whereas Edgar Allan Poe, he used the ghostwriter's name.
Yep.
But he wouldn't use a ghostwriter.
Yeah.
Whereas, this Gridwald bloke was like, oh, you must write this down, like blah 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 blah. So he would dictate stuff.
Yeah.
Whereas Edgar would write stuff. Okay. So the Ludwig.
Yeah.
It actually, many think
Ludwig
stands for, it's basically, it's weird how they get to this point, but so Ludwig is the ghostwriter that Edgar used when he was at school.
So basically trying to tie in everything into one. So what I think
So basically the first stuff that he first gave in to get marked had Ludwig etched on the bottom of the page. Whether it was used paper or someone else's paper.
It was
It was Ludwig.
There was a little something.
Yeah.
So do you reckon this guy, not necessarily saying that he would have killed him, but do you reckon he then thought, my rival's dead, I can make up whatever shit I want to now and get fame from it? But little do many people know.
There's also the 1%.
Yeah, that believe he popped him off.
That believe that Edgar Allan Poe died because Ludwig carried on, and Ludwig was actually Edgar Allan Poe.
Yeah.
But then you would think, why? How would you then publish an obituary if you're already dead?
Yeah,
it's one of those.
It's like if I was to die and someone came across.
It's like he mailed off this obituary.
Yeah.
To say like, open this when I die.
Yeah.
And then it's posted that way.
It's literally like I said, someone like.
It's a weird link, but it is a link.
Yeah. Say like I fucking died. Someone took all my pictures and then was just like, oh, I've got these. And I'm like, hang on, mate, they're mine. I'm like, hang on, you can't make money off me. Fuck off.
But Edgar, as Ludwig, like this rival's like just saying, oh no, I read that.
Yeah, it's kind of shifty, isn't it? It's kind of like, oh no, I did this.
I definitely read that.
And yet, little did Ludwig
but then
or Mr. Griswold know.
It's in the same way that Edgar Allan Poe would write. Yeah. But it's not in the same way that Griswold would write. It's a pseudonym.
Yeah. So I'm guessing there is Theory 5, where there could have been
conspiracy.
Yeah, where there was like some speculation of his death.
Was it him that died, or was it Grimwald that died? And did they just life swap? It's one of these.
I can't see someone doing that of Edgar Allan Poe's state.
No.
I can't see him doing a life swap. I can't see him going.
No, that's what I mean. It's very short. I thought I'd mention it at the end because it's such a small percentage, but it does make you think.
It does. It throws another curveball, but at the same time, you're thinking he's trying to build a life back to claim for his losses. He wouldn't just fake allegedly his own death.
No.
Not while he's about to rake in a shitload of money.
No, it's. But it doesn't make sense. But then it does with the name Lincoln.
Yeah.
It's very.
Like the one thing that I took away from all of this was the fact that, like, it's crazy because like you think, okay, like, you're born into this world with a name, right? But no one in this world knows how much your name's going to be worth until you die.
No.
And it was like, holy shit. Like, I could be a millionaire, but I'm never going to fucking see it.
No.
So that's the one thing I took. I was like, wow. So the guy that like many people in schools and colleges and universities are now studying,
read about,
learn,
study, that do dissertations, that do
Yeah.
everything.
and I'm just like, he had no idea how he would.
His life was so shit,
Yeah,
but his death was so great
yeah.
to help modern day people, like modern day children, modern day.
I mean, like I remember, like I would literally like read a lot when I was younger. I mean, that probably explains why I can write how I do now.
You've
Like,
had so many.
Yeah, I mean, like many people used to say I swallow the fucking dictionary. They're like, how the fuck do you write like that? Do you just swallow a dictionary? No, I just used to read. I used to read a lot. I mean, I was quite a recluse anyway. I would either be drawing shit or reading. And I was reading like not full books, but you know, like when you're in infant school.
Yeah,
I was literally breezing through them. I had no books left to read. You know when you're in school and it's raining and they say you can't go out? So you either build blocks or read. I went through the whole fucking school's library. By the time I left juniors
to be
and
fair,
infants...
it is always fucking busy.
That's what I mean. By the time I left infants and juniors, mate, I've read the whole fucking lot. Well, they call it a library. But you know, you saw what it was like.
The bookshelf, yeah.
Yeah, it was like a few bookshelves. But it was packed.
It was packed.
It was packed. And I read through the whole fucking lot. And I'm thinking like, wow, I could have been a really good writer. And I was like,
If you only applied yourself a bit more.
if only I just pushed.
Edgar.
But like I said, like you don't know what your name's gonna be.
No.
I mean, like you could die. Touch wood, you don't, because I need you for the podcast. But touch wood, you don't. And then later on, your paintings
My
could
painting
be worth.
would be selling for £1 million or whatever. But they won't.
They'll probably dig them up. You probably like laminate them. They'll dig them up and be like, oh wow, I'm gonna put that up.
Yoink.
It was William. Oh, WB. What did that stand for? William Bottom.
Why did he etch it into every corner?
Exactly.
But
it's the same as me and my photos. Like right now, no one gives a shit about. God, it was like you're in a trance. No one gives a shit about abandoned.
The back on your phone's dead. But yeah.
No one gives a shit about like abandoned photography anymore.
No.
But many years later,
it might rekindle something.
They'll look at me standing in like a fucking asylum, like I have been, and be like, "Holy shit!"
And then type something in,
and then all my information just comes up, and I'll be like, "Holy shit!" He stood in like a place, like
that's not even I've heard of now.
Yeah.
Like
you just don't know. And this is what makes his death so fascinating. Like we have 5 theories,
It's
one
not
very
far.
long shot theory, but we have a theory. But like I said, I'd go with the cooping.
Yeah.
I'd go
I
cooping,
would
alcohol.
go with theory 1, purely for the facts that we know.
Yeah. But
But
then
we
we also
haven't got the full breakdown of his medical history and his
No.
death certificate. Like that's.
But he could
Which,
possibly
to be
have
fair,
all of
if
this.
they are big enough of a gang or whatever to get people to vote, once
Yeah, they
they're
are,
in,
mate.
you can take whoever that bloke is.
You could say it was Edgar's great-great-great-grandfather or something and take shit and be like, no, I need the death certificate, we need to produce more of his work. Makes you wonder how they come across all of his work afterwards. Who's cashing in on these books?
Wow.
But I reckon it could be all 4.
All 4 is a good thing. Like, is a good like breakdown of mentality. You know, we've got, as I said, you've got medical, you've got
medical, you've got crime,
abuse and
you've also got his addictions.
Yeah.
And you've also possibly got, like I said, you could have a sexually transmitted disease. His family did suffer with that tumour. It's a big breakdown.
It's a big breakdown.
But
so you going with cooping?
I will go with cooping.
I will join you with cooping.
Oh, we're gonna go coop together, like hens.
Pigeons.
But we can go cooping.
But we can go.
We can go cooping.
We have cooped.
We're cooped up.
We are at this bloody thing.
It's changed. It's funny how the word has changed. Cooping back then probably means what it does, but we'd use it.
Means
Like,
using voted.
we're like,
We've been we're cooped up here.
we're
again.
cooped up inside. We can't go out. Lockdown shit.
Which is trapped. If you break it back, it's
An
trapped.
entrapment of being caught. This has been unsettled, and it's still unsettled,
It's still unsettled.
despite us having theory.
We've agreed, on a theory. But
Yeah.
it is unsettled.
This is our first agreed.
This is our first
We
agreement.
should celebrate. Let's go cooping.